We are back in the FFF podcast studio today for episode 6 of the Football Fun Factory podcast. The episodes are flying out and we hope you are enjoying listening or watching them as much as we are recording them. In today's episode, we will be discussing scouting in youth football, something that's been going on for many a year. Back in my day playing youth football, there'd be scouts watching in big old jackets with the club's badge emblazoned across it as they look to unearth the next superstar. These days, scouting is bigger than ever, with much more policing and rules involved. Scouts can no longer just turn up to a kid's game. They have to give pre-notice, make themselves known on arrival, and stand in an area instructed to by the home club. Often scouts can be seen as the enemy by grassroots clubs, there to take all the best players into their professional clubs and weaken the squad the manager has assembled when they are no longer allowed to play at the club. But surely these scouts are just doing their job, looking to give talented kids the opportunity to play at a pro club with better players and better coaches, giving them the best possible opportunity to become a professional player. Or are they just selling the child and their parents a dream, when in reality the chances of them actually getting into the academy, let alone becoming a professional player, are minuscule at best? So what are we saying, lads? Jonny, any interesting experiences of scouts at a youth football game?
Pretty well versed in lots of different things, obviously being at a professional football club for a number of years, so I've been probably on the different ends of it. So I've been at tournaments, been at grassroots games, being a scout. I've also been at academy football where we welcome scouts, and like you mentioned, like sort of penning them in a corner away from the kids. I've also been with Cambridge United's CEO abroad to go see a game in Ireland to go scout a first team player. So I've got pretty good experience in it, and I'll share some of my stories later.
Oh, great to hear, Jonny. James, any experience in this?
You just reminded me of something that I've never told you. So,
go on then.
Back in the day, with the same CEO, I went to Colney to watch a Norwich City reserve fixture to look at a player, and you were playing in the game at Colney.
How did I play?
Yeah, you did all right. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Experiences, really similar to Jonny. Been to loads of it makes me think of tournaments. So sort of back in the day, spending all day at a tournament, getting sunburned, very dehydrated, and trying to
in the winter
identify, the November tournaments, and then seeing the kids play, and then trying to identify the best possible players to join a youth development program. Looking back at the time, there probably was a bit of a buzz from an egotistical point of view of being the professional club scout that stood on the sidelines. You got a lot of attention and things like that, and I think some people really lap that up, and it becomes more about the scout than the opportunity for the kids, versus then the pressure of kind of the kids knowing that there's somebody watching them on the sidelines and those kind of things. So I think, loads of experiences. And then also I just remember being a grassroots coach, 16, 17 years old, and then the local, again, Norwich scout would come down and watch the games, and everyone would be talking about it. Everyone would be like, oh, there's a scout over there. So loads of experiences. But really looking forward to tackling this subject.
Fantastic. With a vast amount of experience today on this subject. So let's put it on trial. Welcome back to Chaddy's Court. For this part of the podcast, I'm again dressed in this ridiculous wig and judge's gown and ready to put scouting youth football on trial. I've got 2 envelopes here, one for James, one for Jonny. They are contrasting views, and I'd like you to read them out. Just to make you aware, James and Jonny haven't seen these statements yet.
John, you've been stitched up in the last few weeks. You've had some difficult ones.
I have indeed. Been stitched up again because whoever's written this down looks like they got a child to do it. Shall I go first?
Yeah, go on, Jonny.
Scouts and coaches should regularly attend grassroots football matches looking for the brightest young talent. They are trained to know exactly what they're looking for and have the contacts to feed talent into professional clubs to create stars of the future.
James, you want to read your out?
Children should be able to relax and enjoy grassroots football without the pressure of having to worry about the local pro club scout standing on the sideline. Scouts should be banned from the game until children are old enough to showcase their talent.
Interesting. So what I'm going to ask you, Jonny, is for your opening statement, and James, you're going to have the opportunity to question Jonny on his opening statement.
Cool. So obviously in professional football, there are lots of talented young players or talented players that have been part of maybe academies or gone through a youth development system, or even sort of gone through non-league to then go on to play professional football. Obviously, at those younger age groups, the only way in which they're going to be identified is if scouts and coaches are regularly attending grassroots football, spotting the most talented young players and then feeding them into both academies, to other development centres, other sort of programmes in place to then help foster that talent and turn it into a young star that they can then break through at the highest level. So I think it's really important that coaches and scouts get out to games regularly to identify the best talent to then feed them into professional clubs.
James, you're going to have the opportunity to question Jonny on his views there.
So, John, you've clearly demonstrated the benefits of professional club scouts and
Thanks
coaches
very much.
Coming along to grassroots football games. Do you see that there's only benefits, or do you see that there could be some drawbacks?
I see that there are only benefits.
So, just to clarify, you feel there are no drawbacks at all for a grassroots game to have a scout on the sideline?
I think that scouts and coaches should regularly attend grassroots footballs to try and find the brightest young talent.
Just to be clear, just to answer the question, you feel there are no drawbacks to a scout attending a grassroots football
That's
match?
right, James. There are no drawbacks.
Okay. One drawback that I think there could be would be the pressure that the young child may feel, Judge, as having a professional club scout on the sideline, being in a relaxed and friendly environment with their friends, but then suddenly having a pro club and an opportunity to go and become part of a development program. I feel that could add pressure. Do you feel that's true?
Yes, great point. I'm going to sort of refer back to an earlier podcast episode. If you haven't listened to it, it's I think episode 4.
I don't listen to any of the podcasts.
Where I
Good plug, Jonny.
where I quite rightly said pressure makes diamonds. That was my compelling argument at the time, and I stand by it. I think, look, in all seriousness, scouts and coaches need to get to the games to be able to see the children. There will be added pressure for that, and the kids will feel maybe under pressure, especially if they know the couch they know the couch is there, if the scout's there. But the only way that they're going to be identified if the scouts go. Otherwise, how are they ever going to get picked up and put into these professional football clubs?
Okay.
Well answered. Very
Thanks very
good,
much.
Jonny. James, your opening statement, please.
Yeah, so my statement was around children should be able to relax and enjoy grassroots football. So for me, when a child begins their football journey, I think it's really important that they have as little pressure as possible. Obviously, Luke, you played at a high level, you've been in stadiums full of people, there's been fans shouting things from the sidelines, and there's all sorts of things that go on in a professional club environment or a senior level playing football. But the senior level of football is very different to the young childhood age groups. So under 6, under 7s. As we know, scouts attend from those young age groups because professional clubs identify talent from 5, 6 years old. So in my opinion, children should be able to relax and be pressure-free up until an age where they have the ability to showcase their talent and it's appropriate for them to become part of a professional club. So to then have scouts on the sidelines could add a tremendous amount of pressure and could actually stop children playing football from a particularly young age. So I think it's very important to ban scouts until children are ready for it.
Just a quick question from the judge's side.
Sure.
What sort of age do you see
Good
that
question.
as?
Good question. If I was to put an age on that, I would say potentially from under 11s.
Interesting. Jonny, your opportunity to question James.
So obviously academies start scouting and recruiting children under the age of 11. So are you saying that from sort of 7, 8 years old up until 11 that it's just a free-for-all that are in academies? How are
No.
Academy's going to be able to identify the best.
So I think there's a number of different methods to get into a professional club environment. Lots of football clubs can hold trials on a regular basis, and then what people are doing is choosing to be in that environment. So they're choosing to be part of that selection process.
Is the child choosing to be part of that selection process at that age?
Good question, good challenge.
My job's easy today. Keep going, Chad.
Because sometimes parents may be choosing to send their child, but ultimately parents are going to be the governing. They're going to make the governing decision on what that child does, irrespective. So whether they choose, whether they go somewhere, do something. Ultimately, as a child, you're going to be governed by the parents' choices. But the point I'm trying to make is that. You don't have the choice if a scout comes along and puts added pressure on the child. If you're playing for a grassroots team, you don't have that choice. That it's possible that the scout can just come along. Whereas if you're then choosing, yes, I want to be part of an elite program, a development program, and I would like to go along to this event. I understand there's going to be pressure. What it enables the parent to do in that scenario is it enables them to prepare their child for that experience, to talk them through and to educate them. Whereas in a grassroots environment, it could well be that actually that comes as a bit of a surprise and they're not well prepared for that.
Does that not add more pressure? So when you're building up, you've got one chance, you're at this event that's been put on sort of specifically for identifying the most talented players, whereas actually if you're in your own environment in grassroots football, that's where you might actually play your best and you're with your mates, so there is less pressure? Possibly.
I think it's different for everyone, but I think that ultimately people should have that choice, and parents should have that choice, because if you could imagine a under-8s grassroots game, scout comes along from the local pro club, it may be that if you put out a poll to those parents, do you want that scout there? It may be that 50% of them say no, so on that basis I feel that they shouldn't be there.
Interesting point. I think on that one, obviously this is a question that you probably don't know the answer to, but do the parents... As a parent myself, watching my little ones play when they were tiny, you always felt quite happy and proud when a scout was there. You didn't know they were watching your child, but there was something about it as a parent that gave you a bit of a buzz. I think I agree with Jonny to a certain extent, is what you're talking about, the talent idea of loads of kids going to one place to sort of be watched and judged. Does add more pressure than a scout going to a Sunday league game and watching the game.
So do you not feel that judges are a good thing?
Obviously, being a judge, more than a good thing.
But I take your point. It can add pressure, but ultimately, I think it's different for everyone, isn't it? I think it might be different for mums than dads. It might be different for the reason that a child plays football. So that's what it comes back to for me, is that what is the reason that child is playing football and what is the reason they're there? And at its core, at those younger age groups, I think for most people it would be for fun and enjoyment. So to then have that added pressure and then had to have professional clubs coming along to look at players, at 7 years old, actually they're just children playing football with their mates.
Okay, I'm going to make a decision. Has anyone got anything to say before I judge?
You look well today, Chad.
Thank you very much. So, two interesting points of views that I think you've both argued really well. The winner is going to be Jonny Martin.
Get in.
Come on.
Congratulations, John.
Thanks very much,
I'm not going to put it on. I'm just going to hand it to you.
Cheers, mate. Oh, beautiful.
Congratulations. Well, I think this week the two statements were probably not as outrageous as we had in the past. Two well-prepared arguments. But let's talk a little bit more in detail about what we really think. So, Jonny, in your sort of statement, you spoke about the importance of scouts being there. What is your overall view on this subject?
I'm so undecided. I think because I've seen so many different examples of it. I think if done correctly and in the best environment and with the best interest at heart and the going through the right steps, then I think it's probably okay. But I think if I've been the scout that's gone to a tournament, all branded up in my kit, my professional badge on my chest, balling in, thinking I own the place, sort of embarrassed to say it, but it's true. And
Still do that now.
yeah, of course, Ralph Lauren, Luke. But walk in and stand on the corner of the pitch and with your little clipboard writing down names or numbers on the teams that are playing and feeling like, God, everyone's looking at me. Like that, there is that ego thing that you mentioned earlier on. And that isn't right, because I wasn't there to try and provide the best possible opportunities for these children. I was there because, one, I was told to go there and paid to do it, sort of thing. But two, it was probably more about me than it was the kids in that environment.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with it is I don't think scouting's wrong at all. I think it's a profession. Yeah. People do it incredibly well. They go and sort of find... I think where I've got a trouble with scouting is when you're scouting for not outstanding talent, where you're scouting for children to go into a program that's going to cost money to their family. I think that's not scouting. That is not what the role is all about.
Well, this is really interesting, isn't it? Because we're sat here as two people who've run a program that kind of explain that you've just explained. So you're talking about a talent program, so not an academy. What sits beneath an academy, which is a paid-for provision. Traditionally, people entering an academy won't pay an annual fee to be part of that, whereas you're talking about whether it's a professional club or sitting outside of that as a talent program, a paid-for program that you've been invited to that actually costs quite a lot of money to attend.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you're getting scouted to go into an academy where you're not paying for anything, you're just going in, train, you're going to improve as a person, as a player. I think when you're going into a development centre as such, something like that, I think there's no need to be scouted for that. I think there should be just an opportunity to do it for every child, to have the opportunity to do it. And that's where it just doesn't sit easy with me.
Yeah. So your boys obviously attended... So for those that don't know, it's your boys attended the programmes where... Obviously, I was running it at the time. Jonny was running it after that within a professional football club environment. But you effectively paid for your boys to come along to that exact programme.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? Obviously, you've been on the journey of a different journey, and youth football was different at the time. You went through that journey.
Yeah, in my mind, I was absolutely fine with it. Obviously, my kids love football, and it was a bit of a buzz as a parent for Cambridge United. I knew that they weren't part of an academy situation, but they were training, they got a kit, they had the Cambridge United badge, and I was absolutely loved it. Probably where my beliefs come from is after that, as somebody went into work in professional football club who'd done what you've done, Jonny, go to sort of tournaments and just scouting loads and loads of kids to then be invited into it. And obviously that's what happened to my children. It probably it didn't sit right with me being that person that's inviting them, but it felt fine as a parent. And I know that's sort of maybe contradictory.
But that's where I think probably didn't articulate it very well, but that's what my sort of like hesitation was around, because actually I think if it's done well and done right, whether it's academy football or even like the development centres, so like obviously like you said, James, we ran the development centres at Cambridge in the Shadow Academy, and it was right for some children to go into that step of the pyramid, development pyramid at the time, because they weren't ready to go into the academy. I appreciate that. Ideally, they wouldn't have had to pay for that and they could come straight into that and train weekly, but actually go to a tournament, see a child that might have just started playing football but has got, you see, like a great running gait and good physical attributes, and actually they just need a bit of structured training every week. So actually the development centre was right. So in that instance, I do actually think that giving them that opportunity, signposting them to that programme is right. When you talk about mass numbers, and if it's a money-making scheme, and if people are doing it just to get volume in, that's when that doesn't sit right, and that's where just not okay, is it?
Yeah, I think you've articulated what I was trying to say a lot better than I did myself. But that is troubling for me, like working at a club, and this is obviously I went and scouted for players to join a development centre and probably just didn't do it very well, and just saw 4 or 5 players on the pitch that were big, had an influence on the game, and sort of bring them in, which was completely wrong, and that's probably altered my view of how it should be done and what should be done. And for me, it should just be the most very talented children that are scouted, and if that's what they choose to do, they go in to play at an elite level of football for children.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I remember when I think back to scouting, I think in particular to a tournament that we used to hold. And I remember going ahead of that tournament, having planning meetings, and the conversations being kind of pushed from different directions. I won't say quite where, but was we need to find X amount of players for this program on this day.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh no, it's raining. Few of the teams might not turn up. There's not going to be as many children there. Therefore, we might not find enough players to join the program because it's a paid program. The balance of all of that is that actually there is a development need, and then there's children that are part of that program that come into that. They need to be around another group of children to be able to develop and then become part of the academy. So it's not as simple as saying, looking at it and going, oh, it's a paid for program, it's a money making scheme, it's a this, that, the other, because it's really easy to label things as that. And what I've just described is exactly that, where we've got to go and find an X number of children to bring in X number of pounds to keep the program running, to develop the children, to bring them through. But actually, then again, your boys are part of that program. You paid for it. As a parent, you're happy to do that. It came into that, and then have gone on to then join the academy and sign scholarships and professional contracts. So actually, you could then say, actually, the program's work. So it's not quite as simple and cut and dry or black and white as this is right or that's right. I think it's. I've got real mixed feelings on it, if I'm honest.
It's just on that, and obviously you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. But them programs that you guys are running were they built more in mind of financial gain for the football club or development of players that potentially could one day play for the football club or another club?
Both.
I don't think they sit in isolation, do they? They
both.
sit separately.
It's just what the percentage swing was, and I guess the challenge with professional football is that the percentage swing would change dependent on the needs of the football club at that time. So that we can talk in detail, can't we? We can go to where we were at that time. We were at a football club that was struggling financially. At that time, where it was struggling financially, it swung more in the favour of let's get children into the programme because that's what's needed. Not driven by us, but driven by kind of what we were told at that time and the powers that be. Then when draw Man United in the FA Cup and get promoted and play at Wembley twice in the same season, the needs then shifted to let's get the best possible players, let's reduce the number of children within the programmes and actually filter the best players through to the academy.
Then when they spent that money within 2 weeks of getting it,
On the toilet.
back again, yeah. So look, it's
I think on
swings and
that,
roundabouts.
just to almost sort of add a bit of context to that as well, it would then be like get another session, wouldn't it? It would be like start a new place in a new area, then you go into that area to then try and filter in more children. It like you said, it's so difficult because the balance did swing throughout our journeys and our time, and that's where it comes back to the thing I said at the start, where I think it is absolutely fine. Scouting is absolutely fine, and when done well, like you mentioned, and done in the right way, then I think it's quite good because children should be given the opportunities. If they're excelling at a certain thing, it's no different. If they're excelling at school at maths, the teacher will essentially scout them, identify them as a top performer within that and look to challenge them in different ways. So,
how do we feel? I know there'll be football coaches watching this, and I know that there's a topic that they'll want to have raised. So I'm going to kind of raise it on their behalf, I think. How do we feel about, obviously, that being from a non-professional environment? So there's what we were doing at that time. We were working for a professional football club with a professional football club's academy with a genuine opportunity to go through, however small percentage actually get through, but there was an opportunity to go through to become a professional footballer. How do we feel about it when it's from not a professional football club environment, where it's an elite program, a profit-making business and enterprise that sits outside of professional football?
Yeah, for me, I think that's completely wrong. I think that has to be a complete choice of the parent to send their child somewhere like that. I don't think you, as someone that works for a development company like that, can go watch players, get in contact, and then invite them to come and join and pay for that. Obviously, with a professional football club, that doesn't sit completely right with me. But for a company that isn't, in my mind, is completely wrong.
John?
So just to push back on that, the decision lies with the parent. So
True.
if they take their child to that experience and they're having fun, they enjoy it, they like the coaches, they have a good experience, then surely that's okay. Like, it's up to them to make a decision.
It's another route in.
What doesn't sit comfortable with me is those organisations and those companies selling children and parents the dream that this will then get them into an academy, this will make them a professional footballer. If they are selling their experiences as a opportunity for their child to train and develop, like, I think that's okay, because
I think that's okay of selling that, but not scouting on an individual basis and then contacting a family saying, come and join our development. I think that's wrong.
Fair. Yeah, agree with that.
Yeah, not 100%.
Go on.
So if you're running an elite program, there's an argument. I wouldn't say this is my opinion, but if you then want to create an opportunity for children to develop their football in the same way that a child may want to develop their ability to play the piano, you might put them in a group of people that can play the piano to a certain level, and actually then identifying, saying, Luke, we'd like your child to come along to this program. They're going to work alongside other children of similar ability. Seems sensible from a development perspective. So just to sit on the fence, I'm going to throw that grenade.
I think that's absolutely fine if the parent is, because if your child's a talented piano player, that development piano centre hasn't gone and watched your child and scouted them to then ask them to join and pay for that. Whereas if you're a parent,
they can play chopsticks really, really well.
Yeah, potentially.
The DPC,
but I think if you're
piano centre,
like a parent that recognises or thinks your child's talented, they find this development centre's got a really good reputation, I'm going to contact them and sign my child up. I think that's absolutely fine. What doesn't sit right with me is that development centre watching a child, contacting a parent and inviting them to come and pay to join that development centre.
It's an interesting one. I think there's so many different directions you could take it. I've got real mixed feelings on it. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the motivations and ethos of the coaches involved. We talked a lot in the past about football coaching and the motives of those coaches, the ethos of the organisation that they sit within. And to be honest, all of this just comes as a massive relief to me, because we don't have to deal with any of this anymore, do we? We used to be right in the thick of the politics of all of this. Yeah. But at Football Fun Factory, we can literally go, we don't care if you're a boy, if you're a girl, if you kicked the ball before, whether you've never kicked a ball in your life, whether you fall over every time you kick it, you don't know how to do a step over, you can do a Maradona spin, who cares? We want children to come in, play football, have fun, make friends, develop as a human being, and if you so happen to develop as a footballer and go on to play for a professional football club's academy, then all the best to you.
You'll get scouted.
You'll get scouted.
I think for my final thoughts on it, I think scouting's come on leaps and bounds. I think there's a lot of qualifications. People use it like it's a real passion for them. In my case, I was scouted to play for Manchester United by a guy called Ray Medwell, and if it wasn't for him and the effort that he took with me, I wouldn't have been a professional footballer. So for me, I think scouting within professional football is absolutely fine and fantastic when you are looking for that elite talent that could potentially go and have a career in the game.
Nice.
Well summarised.
Yeah, should we move on to some listeners' questions?
Let's have some quizzes. Okay, I've got a couple of listeners' questions. The first one links very well into today's topic. My son is 8 and has just been invited to join our local pro club's academy. Having listened to a few different podcasts on this topic, as a parent, I'm torn whether to let him go, but he is desperate to go. What should I do? Johnny?
Yeah, I think if the child wants to go and try it out and go and play, then let them go and play. I think it doesn't need to be that they go into that environment and then they become a professional footballer or their hopes and dreams are dashed in a couple of months' time. I think it's go and experience it, see If it's something that the child gets along with, okay. If the parent does, the parent enjoys it. Probably trying to understand a little bit more from the club to understand their sort of ethos, philosophy, what they're trying to do. But yeah, I think go give it a try.
James?
Yeah, I think let the child decide. Go along, give it a try. See how they find it. If they're having fun, crack on.
Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the parents in that situation, because as a child it can be built up to be a really massive thing. I think sort of managing expectations is so important, and just a new experience and going to enjoy it. Last one. Good one for you, James, the FFF's plans in 2024?
Good timely question. We just set all the goals for 2024. Yeah. Football Fun Factory is a fast-growing franchise. We've grown across the UK. We've got over 80 franchisees, and our plans are to keep on growing, not because we're focused on growing a business, but because we're focused on growing opportunities for children. We want to make sure we're putting football fun on the doorsteps of every child across the nation. Our goals are very simple. We want to be the world's leading children's football coaching organisation. We want to make football accessible to all. So we're going to keep on growing. We're looking to identify coaches in specific areas of the country now. So there's places where the Football Fun Factory isn't. We're not in Leeds. We're not in Sheffield. We're not in Newcastle. We're not in Bournemouth. And you can put yet at the end of all of those sentences, because we will be, because there's a lot of places that 12 months ago we were not in. So I think we want to keep on growing, keep on offering opportunities, keep reminding ourselves, which is what this podcast is all about, reminding ourselves of why we're doing it, because this takes us back to our roots, doesn't it? Football coaching. It's nice as we're growing an organisation. It's easy to get distracted from the key reason why you're doing things, and the key reason we do it is because we love developing children through football. So if we can find new superstar head coaches in those areas and a few more that I've just mentioned, then we'll be very happy, and that's the main goal for 2024.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for listening, and we will see you very soon.